I hate talking about aviation. What is that? There it is. I used to fly those. That's a Britten-Norman Islander. They're very slow. They're puddle jumpers. I used to fly those around Caribbean islands. Oh, only for one, not even a full season. Hated the Caribbean. Anyway, why have I mentioned that? The last 4 years, gradually, I have meandered, 10 years. Whilst on the one hand, living amongst the real bottom 10%, the only place you could rent somewhere, and I kind of made it work for me. I found a way of mentally subsisting in it wasn't their world. Unfortunately, half of them were so sick, really over the line. Anyway, so unfortunately over the last 10 years I've meandered into, for company, the middle classes, middle and slightly upper middle. And in my past area, so all it was ever about, it all comes down to that one evening, that middle class popper. Her husband had been in the Ministry of Education and she was a potter. And she'd come to live in a country place, and I'd introduced her to my young housemate. My young housemate needed company, or rather affinity with somebody who also had depression. And so this woman had come to live in the countryside, basically. We had, a few days earlier, rescued, meaning rescue is that horrible word. There'd been a dying lamb in a field, and the farmer's attitude, I know because I asked him, was, oh fuck it, leave it to die. So we'd taken it in and fed it up a bit. Used to have to do that when I was a teenager. You had to. Hand rear lambs when the parent had died. Mother. Anyway. And the following day I saw her in the town. Oh, it was so nice to come and see that little lamb. But you know, when I got home, I had to take all my clothes off and put them in the washing machine. It's like, Jesus Christ, that's the moment. It's like the middle classes. Because they're towny middle classes. They're just all neurotic about the countryside. So, why do I mention that? So there's that's been the big shock of my life. Those middle classes coming out to the countryside, but being neurotic about the countryside. You know, it was the ultimate. I mean, for God's sake, the woman was only petting it a little bit. Time and time again, there would be occasions like this. It's just too much. What's the point? But the thing that really worries me is, so, seeing how, yes, it's just quite simply say, the middle class behave, or 97% of them in 2020. Nobody said, I was going around in April 2020 saying, hey, facts, science. When you do farming, you're good at science. Farming is about the simple basic science of a creature being as healthy as possible. Then you get as much money as possible from them at the market. I became pretty much veggie later on, but that's what farming is, or animal farming. So yeah, I was going around April 2020 saying, oh, just try and get outdoors, try and keep your body moving. We've got this glorious sunshine. You're basically not driving now for a while. Get your bodies moving, walk up into those hills. And it was completely and utterly permitted. I mean, it was so sparsely populated compared to even regions like this where I was living. But no, the middle class is just Almost none of them got it. Now, why did I point to that aeroplane? Because I'm intellectual, and I listen, monitor what the conversation is. Your Lex Friedmans, well, we don't bother with Mr. Musk, but similar people to this, and it's like the middle classes have got some bizarre disconnection from their body. And I took up the mobile phone pretty much as soon as it became affordable. One of the very early ones, except I would keep it in my pocket. Hardly anyone would call me anyway. It was more for work. It's just like, I can be out when I'm on standby to fly little aeroplanes, but that's not what it's about. This is the thing. Seeing how the middle classes have just got obsessed, and I'm surprised, because the middle classes largely resisted at first. It wasn't cool to be into technology too much. But I think there's been some bizarre kind of like switch over of like, oh no, I've got to be as act up as possible now. I dominate the world via my machine. The thing that terrifies me, so Lex Friedman's recently done a talk with somebody, and I can't remember his name, but he's one of the extreme, he's intellectual, he was quite a good speaker. They're going, the middle classes with their, because it did become a middle class thing, and it started in America. 30 years ago, the brother of an important person to me here lived in America, and they wanted to start up essentially a technologically based solution to exercise. Can't remember what they called it, but they were trying to get their financing. Tech. And our middle classes have completely and utterly. You can't have an intelligent conversation with a middle class person about technology. They're almost all of them are fundamentalists. But in a bizarre way, they also know that social media doesn't work. But anyway, here's the point. They are going to just jump into AI. It is their response to not being able to deal with nature, which they can't, ultimately. The British middle classes are so divorced from nature. They're going to rush headlong into technology even more and even more and even more. And I think it is terrifying, actually. The AI or AGI version. I don't hold out much hope. My point, those aeroplanes are what you might call clockwork. You don't need any fancy screens in them. They were all just clockwork, with clockwork driven instruments, driven by air pressure. I've never even used a GPS in an aircraft or in a car or on a phone. I turn mine off. But that is going to be such a big thing. It's going to be these things are not the big thing. I've been thinking about this recently. 100 years ago, as the church was waning in its influence, there was hardly any sport, particularly in the majority of the country. No television, obviously. Radio was a fairly limited thing. Books, stories will have been so important. They will have been the emotional setting of many people, even the working class. And I think the biggest change has been in the 50s and 60s to go for the new distractions to come along. I think that's the real biggest change. Not even so much television, just new distractions, new decadent distractions. But then this one that's going to come along next I think that is going to be as massive. Anyway, there we go.